Hollywood already did it. It's your boy here, Terrence, and we are here. It has finally arrived. Today is game day. It's Endgame day, folks. Everybody's prepped, ready to go to the theater around 6:30, maybe midnight, 2:30 shows. Doesn't matter when you see it, but you're gonna see it today if you're a fan or sometime this weekend. So, today's the perfect day, right before everybody heads out to the theater, to do that last minute trailer rewind for Phase 3. Now, Phase 3 is a little interesting because we're still in it. It's probably the longest phase, not probably, it is 100% the longest phase that they've had so far, and we're still going. Today's not quite the culmination because they're saying now that Spider-Man Far From Home is the final part of Phase 3, but it's going to be a culmination of 21 films prior. So, we're going to go ahead and look at the last Phase 3 trailers and see where we've come from, where we've gone, where we're heading, and where did you fall in love with the MCU. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and ring that bell below. And let's go ahead and get started. So, Phase 3 begins with Civil War, which probably with Avengers is one of the most important films in the franchise because it is what ends up splitting the Avengers apart, which if you've seen Infinity War, you're going to see Endgame. The reason why Thanos is able to succeed is because they are not at their full strength. They are not one. They are not all together. So let's go ahead and look at Civil War trailer and see what we had in store for us.
Try to save as many people as we can.
Oh, Bucky, the bane of Cap's existence.
You don't give up.
At this point, the Russo brothers had already had the fans on their side. They're like, cool, I'll see whatever the heck they give us.
Washington, D.C.
But this was a cool trailer and a cool story because it's the first time that it seems like the Avengers were being held accountable for their actions. When they go to New York or when they go to Sokovia, yes, they save people, but they also let a lot of people die. A lot of damage is left behind. And I know a lot of fans of the DC universe will go up in arms and say, oh, they blow up stuff and they blow up stuff with so much destruction. This is the first time that they're acknowledging and they're kind of like, we need to pay for our sins.
Sometimes I wish I could.
And in doing so,
Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth.
punch in your perfect teeth. Sometimes in doing so,
I know we're not.
they basically splinter off and become weaker for it.
His hands are still our own.
This one's also good because it introduces us to two characters that we did not have. We get a new Spider-Man for the MCU, and Tom Holland, who I think kills it, and we get Black Panther, who first time ever on screen, who murders it.
The whole world was wrong about you.
Saw this movie at the Chinese in a massive, like 800 some odd people theater.
I'm not the one that needs to watch their back.
It was a concert.
This doesn't have to end in a fight, Tony. You just started a war.
There are so many great moments shown within just this trailer that when you see them and how they emotionally pay off for the movie, I can do this all day. And just seeing Iron Man and Cap fight, you're in the theater with this trailer on like, I need to see what happens. How do they get to this point?
On the roof.
And saving the button.
Hey, everyone.
And I remember also when this trailer came out, everyone was freaking out about the automatic eyes and how they adjusted automatically, which is obviously if you're getting Tony to do tech for you, that's the way you do it. Civil War wound up being great. People have it up there. Some people have it in their top 3 or top 5. It's up there. It's high. I don't think the Russos have made a bad movie. I just think Winter Soldier was so high, and now subsequently Infinity War is as well, that Civil War kind of is like, oh yeah, that's a good one. They really did a good one there too, but it pales in comparison to the other two. But it's a really good film. After Civil War, they hit us with the Doctor Strange, which is a weird character, a wild character, not as far out as some of the other ones that we talked about before, like Guardians and Thor, when Thor first came out. But it's weird. You're dealing with mysticism and magic arts and basically Hogwarts-esque type stuff, but you're putting it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Benedict Cumberbatch was a perfect person. He looks just like him, and I think it's also a good person to go tit for tat. That when we finally do get Strange and Tony on screen together, you can see the two of them not liking each other, going toe to toe, tit for tat with each other, and it works out. So let's go ahead and look at Doctor Strange. All right.
Doctor Strange. You think you know how the world works?
I recently just watched this one over again in my rewatch, and
What if I
one, he shouldn't have survived that car crash. I mean, that thing flipped over like 75 times. He should be dead. But it was cool. I forgot how much I really like Doctor Strange, because it's cool that this character begins
Not everything has to.
so egotistical, such an a-hole, and then you just have to break him down to get him to the point that we get. And Strange,
We harness energy.
I do remember there were some issues too
We
with
travel great distances.
Tilda Swinton being cast as the Ancient One. I think she does great, and they do make mention that she's of Celtic origin and not of the origination of that's in the comics, which I think is fine. Tilda kills it, and she's great at playing androgynous type characters. I just think there was a point where inclusivity and being responsible for putting other nationalities, ethnicities, and sexes on the screen was important. They did. They put a woman in that part. So I think everybody wants to have all boxes checked off all the time, and I think Marvel chose to go one way, and it worked out. This is a gorgeous looking movie. It gives you things in the MCU that we had not had yet, and Strange is a character that needed to be put on the board for Infinity War to work, and to have somebody that can go toe to toe with Thanos in some scenes, but also give you the quote that basically is the title of what we're all waiting for today.
What's this? My launcher? The Wi-Fi password. We're not savages.
Mads Mikkelsen, Tilda. Yeah, it was a good, really good movie. Hold on a second, Guardians, chill out. So it's a really good film. The one thing that I was thinking of, and there's a lot of it's because Phase 3 has gone on for as long as it has. We're getting two Spider-Man films in Phase 3, but we haven't gone back to Doctor Strange, which is just weird to me. I feel like we should have gotten another Strange by now. And I don't like the gap in time, because I love to see what Baron Mordo does with Chiwetel Ejiofor. I like to see. I know there's talks of possibly putting Nightmare in there. So I feel like Strange should have had a second go by now, and it's a little disheartening that we haven't gotten there yet. I know he's on the docket to get stuff after, but it's a character that I would have liked to have gone back to that world. And it's weird too, because we get Doctor Strange in this film very new, not really knowing his powers, and by the time that we see him in Infinity War, that dude's a legend. Like, he's just doing stuff left and right. He's got his yellow gloves. He is all about that life. And I think you almost get him there in wherever we get with Thor Ragnarok, which makes sense because Thor takes place right before Infinity War. So I would like to either see what happens in that meantime, or at least give us something where he's at full power and we can kind of just let him go. But I think they'll get there. Next up, as you probably heard a little bit with the soundbite, was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I really liked Guardians 2. And if you can listen to our podcast, it's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. I talked about how much I enjoyed that film. Blake, my co-host, was not as big of a fan of 2 as he was 1. I personally felt that 2 is the first time that they did a 1-to-1 as far as their original and their sequels, or their value and how good they weren't that equal. Now I know a lot of people do not like Guardians 2. But what I have heard is that in a lot of the rewatches that people watched, if you watched these films in chronological order, Guardians 1 and Guardians 2 back to back, because they only happen about 3 months apart from each other, I hear that a lot of people enjoyed Guardians 2 much, much more when you watch them as one solo unit. Because you get the family dynamic. His mom, Peter Quill is more hurt about his mom in the first one. It becomes a father picture in the second one. And it kind of creates, you're not birthed into your family. You choose your family. Like you can do all of that type of stuff. So it's all dealing with family, and I think it works much better as a narrative. I got that without watching them back to back, but I kind of did anyway, because when I went to go see Guardians 2, I had just watched Guardians 1, so it felt fresher to me. I really enjoy Guardians 2, and I'm glad, with all the controversy that's happened with James Gunn, I'm glad that he was put back in position to direct 3, because I think he is the voice that series needs. But let's go ahead and look at Guardians 2 trailer.
Hope you're ready. It'll be here any minute. Is that a rifle?
You don't know what a rifle looks like?
It's just swords were your thing and guns were mine. But I guess we're both doing guns now. I just didn't know that.
Oh, that's intense.
How cute is Baby Groot, man?
I see it within you. Fear, jealousy, betrayal.
What Guardians 2 also does, and it's very important for Infinity War to work, and I think it's going to probably play a big part in Endgame, is Nebula and Gamora's relationship to each other as being sisters and being daughters of Thanos, who obviously we see what has happened to Gamora in the Infinity War. And I think Nebula's going to have some ramifications, because her sister basically gave herself up for Nebula. After what we saw in Guardians 2, they're not really getting along, and Nebula kind of has to tell her the reason why is because I always felt like I had to compete with you, and you were always trying to winning. And I think there's so many great family relationships that occur in this film. It's interesting because this trailer shows a lot from just the opening sequence. A little dance number at the very beginning.
Sometimes the thing you're searching for your whole life is right there by your side all along. You're right.
All you do is yell at each other. You're not friends.
No.
We're family. So maybe her.
Still get the vibe of the old school music with Guardians.
After all these years, I've found you. And who the hell are you? I'm your dad, Peter.
And you just drop in like Kurt Russell's in them. Like, wait, what now? Hold on. You hide that until the very end of the trailer? Come on now. Give me something. But that was a cool little drop in at the very end. And I think it works out. I like Ego Planet. I love that. What has happened in the MCU, if you haven't noticed at this point, is that while we still get grounded every now and then, we'll go do Civil War, we'll go do Infinity War, was a little bit more, not grounded, but we go do Civil War, we go do Winter Soldier, we do Iron Man 3 is a little less grounded, but it's in that vein. But we do those, but then on the flip side, we'll get you a Doctor Strange, or we'll get you a Guardians of the Galaxy, or we'll do Thor. And I think they've earned the right to do some of these off-the-wall or off-the-cuff things with the audience. And they've earned the cachet with them because they've given them such quality for the most part across the board that are like, all right, we'll go to space, we'll go to whatnot. Because I'll tell you this, my wife, who was not an MCU fan, I've spoken to her about all the previous rewinds, she's in. And she is someone who likes to say that she is not a sci-fi fan. But then after Doctor Strange, or after Thor Ragnarok, or after Guardians of the Galaxy, which she loves, I'm like, well, those are sci-fis. And she's like, yeah, but those are different. Those are MCU films. And I'm like, it's all sci-fi. But I think they've gotten the audience inundated enough that, okay, we'll accept that. So when you get to something like Infinity War, where you're combining all the elements, people are just riding with it. They're like, all right, this big guy's running around collecting stones. Fine. Saw a talking tree, raccoon. I saw Howard the Duck and some stuff. Screw it, I'm in. Let's go. Which is a cool way to do things. Next up, that from the MCU was Spider-Man: Homecoming. Now, if people don't know the whole story with this, if you're not aware about the MCU when they first came out, when Marvel was first doing movies, they were loaning characters out. So they were loaning. Spider-Man went to Sony, Ghost Rider as well, and Fox got the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. And so for the longest, the only movies that the Marvel Cinematic Universe could make were the ones that were basically what were considered their C or D list characters, the Incredible Hulks, Iron Mans, people that people knew of but not really that much, and they made a fortune off of them. But they wanted to get some of their folks back home. And I guess there were talks already between Sony and Marvel to make this deal happen, but then Sony got hacked during the whole Seth Rogen interview film thing. And emails were released, stuff was released, and it was basically a chain that had shown that Spider-Man was going to be coming home in some way or another to the MCU. And then it actually happened. And so we were all blessed that there was a deal made that Marvel gets to pick who they want to be Spider-Man, gets to make the film, and then Sony keeps all the profits on the solo films. And for the times that Spider-Man is involved with the Avengers, obviously Marvel gets to keep all of that money. It's a two-way street because it gives Sony some bona fide grand hit money, but it also makes Spider-Man a character who is back in the forefront and popular enough that you can sell toys and merchandise, which Marvel gets off of that anyway. If you guys don't know, Spider-Man is to Marvel what Batman is to DC. So as long as they're good, things should be moving in the right way. So masterfully, they picked Tom Holland, who looks like a kid, who feels more like Peter Parker than anyone that I've seen in any of the Spider-Mans. And I still say that Spider-Man 2, even though it's a little dated, that had Maguire in it, is probably still the best overall Spider-Man film. But I feel like Tom Holland is 100% the best Spider-Man. And so we got Spider-Man: Homecoming. So let's go ahead and look at that trailer. What was important for this trailer to do was to one say that you're in the same world as the MCU.
What's up, guys?
And they immediately do it off the bat.
You guys aren't the real Avengers. I can tell Hulk gives it away.
By the Hulk gives it away, Thor, Iron Man. You immediately show people that we're not the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. We are a part of the MCU, which I think was the biggest thing that they had to do because these Spider-Mans have been coming so fast after each other that they had to make it be known. I also love that this gives you high school John Hughes feel with the music and kids kind of staring at random girls as they walk through the cafeteria.
You guys are losers.
So, to become an Avenger, are there like trials or any?
And you throw in, of course, Robert Downey Jr.
I definitely don't do anything I wouldn't do. There's a little gray area in there, and that's where you operate.
It's important for Infinity War and Endgame because obviously we all know the scene that made everyone cry, at least me anyway, in Infinity War. Shows you how much the relationship between Tony and Peter, how strong it was.
But you're not ready yet.
You're the Spider-Man. No, I'm not. I'm not. This is just a costume. This is from the ceiling.
Stay close to the ground. And stay out of trouble.
And then you get Michael Keaton, who for me is one of the most underrated actors, and I think he's phenomenal in everything that he does.
Hit all the time. But you are here. This is my chance to prove myself.
Kid, what is going on with you?
I'm really sorry. I'm so busy.
But this movie does a great job of putting a kid in a situation that a kid shouldn't be in. but he comes out of it, and that's what makes Spider-Man who he is. You get this kid who is still got to go to school, still has to juggle his girlfriend or the girl that he thinks he likes, or parties that he wants to go to with this. And you finish with the swinging of Tony and flying of Tony and swinging of Spider-Man. I enjoy this film. It's not one of my favorites, but I think it was a great way to put Spider-Man on the map. And what's really smart that Civil War did is that the intro to both Spider-Man and Black Panther was done. You didn't have to introduce and go through a 1-to-1 ratio of introing that character. You kind of can just like, all right, we'll just tell the best film. You kind of got his intro or what he was about in Civil War. So a lot of the times what happens with origin stories is that you spend a good 30 to 40 minutes telling a backstory that it doesn't give you enough time to get to the story. And I think both Spider-Man Homecoming and Black Panther kind of just take the jumping off point that Civil War gives them and moves on a little bit further, which is a smart way to do things. So then next they had Thor Ragnarok, which is interesting. This is the first time that they were releasing 3 films within a year. They've done the 2 a year for quite some time, but this is the first time they were like, all right, we're going to start dropping 3 a year. And so their first time batting up the cleanup on that year was Thor Ragnarok from Taika Waititi. Now, this movie is on a lot of people's top list. It's definitely, for I would believe most people, the best film that Thor has done. It's his best solo film. And you get to see Hulk again, which we haven't seen in a while since the stuff in Age of Ultron. But there are some criticisms of the film that's saying that it is too funny. And at times there are moments that are very serious that the movie sort of quickly brushes over and doesn't take quite with the heft that people think it deserves. Mostly in respects to what happens to Odin and kind of what happens to Asgard as a whole and some of the Warriors 3. We don't get the emotional connection that I think people want from Thor in that film, but where it does pop up, and this is why I think as a series it works. Yes, Thor Ragnarok is very fantastical and very much in the vein of like a Flash Gordon with Taika's humor as opposed to James Gunn's humor. The space stuff all has become a little zany and wacky. But when we get Thor in Infinity War and he has those moments with Rocket where he gets very emotional, you kind of in that moment realize that, oh no, all of this stuff is weighing. I think altogether there's a culmination of it, but I think in this film alone, it doesn't quite happen. But you can tell that Chris Hemsworth is being reinvigorated with this character, and I think whatever longevity or whatever proclivity he had to leave this stuff before, I think may have been erased, and I think he may have extended the time that you can have Chris Hemsworth as Thor, which I think is going to be important in the long run to have some of the OG players around when or whatever an Endgame happens. All right, but let's go ahead and watch the Thor Ragnarok trailer.
So much has happened since I last saw you. I lost my hammer, like yesterday, so that's still pretty fresh.
Chris Hemsworth is very good at comedy.
Self-discovery. Where I met you.
Where are we?
You have no idea. Hell of the goddess of death has invaded Asgard.
Oh, I've missed this.
Also, I can watch Kate Blanchett and Tessa Thompson do whatever. So being in a Thor movie, yeah, I'm all about that.
I won easily.
Doesn't sound right.
Well, it's true.
Asgard is dead. And it'll be
There's some
reborn in
beautiful
my
just
image.
imagery and shots that happen in this
Glad to see me.
I need to stop her here and
that
now.
I think the weight gets lost sometimes because it's more gorgeous than it is, let's sit in this pain for a moment. It's quickly moving on.
Surprise! This will be such fun.
When we get Loki back, Valkyrie's amazing. Which is important because I think if you've seen posters now, Valkyrie survives the snap, so she's going to be a part of Endgame in some form or fashion. Makes me happy. The obligatory Chris Hemsworth without a shirt shot, which got my wife into the theater, but she was going to be there anyway.
What were you the god of again?
We're the same, you and I. Just a couple of hot-headed fools.
Yeah, same. Hulk like fire.
And we get a talking and more educated Hulk.
Kind of both like fire.
And Hulk like raging fire. Thor like smoldering fire.
What I think really works for this is that you get Hulk back on the screen, because if people don't know, Hulk's rights still remain with, I believe, Paramount, maybe Universal. I think it's Universal. And if used in solo form, they can't make a solo movie off of Hulk without having to give the money to Universal. However, they have rights to put Hulk wherever the heck else they want to. So they can put him in Thor, they can put him in Avengers, and they don't have to give anything back to Universal. So that's been their loophole for giving Hulk. Also, they've seen that a Hulk solo movie may not work as well as they want because he's so OP, overpowered, that it becomes hard to make a sustainable and good enough story for the quote-unquote monster of the week. Another thing about this movie, and this trailer specifically, and people who went to Comic-Con or saw the trailer for Comic-Con and know what happened to Thor within Ragnarok, this was the first time. It also happened because this Ragnarok bled right into Infinity War, but Ragnarok is the first time that the trailers started giving outright misleads. If you've seen the shot, you can see it in the corner. Is that in the shots, Thor has both eyes, but by the time that part of the scene happens, when he's looking up, we know what happens, and Hela has taken one of his eyes. And then even in Infinity War, some of the shots that originally were shown had Thor with both eyes. There was something that they didn't want to give away, but it added stakes to it, that you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute, they're not always telling us everything. And we get it again later in another trailer, which I'll point out, but it's starting to make you say, okay, everything that they show us in the trailer isn't always 100%, which makes what we're seeing for Endgame that much more intriguing. All right. Next up was the insane phenomenon that was Black Panther. I cannot say enough about what this film meant to me and what it meant for people who look like me. I remember going to a theater out here in Pasadena, which isn't that full of African Americans or people of color. And even at that theater, there were people completely dressed out in African garb, ready. This was something that I think was a long time coming, and they finally got someone. While T'Challa is African, he still looks like us. Killmonger looks like us. And it was something that we could identify with. Ryan Coogler, young man from Oakland, put things that a young African American can relate to people of Africa can relate to, with piercings and tattoos and discs, and just made everything that made Wakanda feel so lived in. And then you add in the soundtrack from TDE, for those who don't know, and you kind of get this groundswell of just perfectness that I think, and also, I mean, releasing it through Black History Month wasn't the worst idea. And I think you get this perfect, just this windstorm that just captivated the world, and for the first time ever got Marvel Cinematic Universe an Oscar nomination for Best Picture, and won them ensemble awards at SAG Awards and all of that type of stuff. It just became this thing that was so massive, and for an origin story for a character, that's huge. It's in my top three. I know a lot of people have it somewhere in there. They still say that Winter Soldier and Infinity War, and I get those. I think there are. It's not a perfect film, but it's very, very close, and it creates a feeling that I don't think many of these other MCU films create. And I haven't watched this trailer since watching this film. This is a movie I watch probably every 3 weeks. This one and Infinity War. So let's go ahead and look at the trailer and see what they got.
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky. Yeah. But I have never seen anything like this.
How much more are we hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
It just feels different.
Yahoo.
Deny.
My son, it is your time.
I don't think Angela Bassett has aged in the last 2 decades.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be.
Oh, sure.
Don't freeze.
Never freeze. So what's crazy is that in this trailer they don't have, probably because none of it was done, but they don't have any of the Kendrick Lamar music, but they're using Run the Jewels, which kind of still gives you the point of what this film is kind of going for and what it's doing.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over.
Qual is back from when we talked about him earlier in Rewind 2 for Phase 2.
Determines what happens to the rest of the world.
Wakanda forever. You know what's interesting? I went to Comic Con the year that they showed Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Black Panther. And Infinity War was huge, but I think Black Panther just exploded that show. And what they showed, I think it was the first time that the cast had seen some of the stuff that was there too. And it kind of just like, okay, they got one. And that was a great time to be there. It was great to just see that each step of where Black Panther came from, went to, and what we got in the long run. So then next up, obviously after Black Panther, was Infinity War. I know Infinity War is the first film that like takes place immediately after another film ends. So while Black Panther came out came out after Ragnarok, I think it's best to watch Ragnarok directly on top of watching Infinity War. It kind of gives you a better viewpoint. In fact, I do know a lot of people, because Infinity War was such a huge success, there are people who watched Infinity War or watched Black Panther and then saw that there were clips or stuff that happened in Wakanda. I was like, well, then I want to watch. Mostly people of color or African Americans, and had not watched any of the rest of the MCU. And I had to tell some people, I was like, you might need to watch this, and this, but specifically you need to watch Thor Ragnarok, because this movie opens media res, like you're in the middle of it. And I know some people have some problems with that. That becomes the hiccups, that you kind of have to have some back history to, I think, fully enjoy Infinity War. Infinity War is still a watchable and really good movie if you don't have those things, but I think without them, some context is lost, or some things that happen don't mean as much or have as much weight, or have the feel that you have if you have all of the layers that have happened throughout the MCU. But let's go ahead and watch this first trailer, which I think I have seen. This trailer I probably could recite to you verbatim. I've seen this trailer so many times, but let's go ahead and cue it up. Starting now.
There was an idea
You get the overlay of Nick.
Bring together a group of remarkable people.
This was cool because you were getting all the different people doing their one-overs. And you were getting to see that Strange is back, and Wanda and Vision are around.
So when they needed us,
Thor.
we could fight the battles.
And you can tell that you only get Thor from the back, so you don't have to do the eye reveal. What has now become, I think this is when the Russos are like, people always say that Marvel doesn't have a score, or they're not really a score, but that Avengers theme is now well known, and to use it and slow it down, you're just like, oh, something's happening.
To feel so desperately that you're right.
Spidey senses, which we didn't really get to see in his own movie, but you're like, oh no, they're there.
Dread it. Run from it. Destiny's still alive.
Cosmic Q. Brolin is just masterful as Thanos. It's kind of unfair he gets to be Thanos and Cable at the same time. And now, because Fox owns Disney in the same world, Get This Man a Shield became the biggest thing going for a while now. I know a lot of women were fans of Cap with the beard. I'm curious, Cap beardless or with beard, ladies? Go ahead and leave that in the comments.
But this does put a smile on my face.
Wakanda forever! It's a great shot. It's a great shot of them all running. That never freaking happens in the movie.
Who the hell are you guys?
I'm like, oh, the Guardians get to come play. So that shot of the team running in Wakanda with Hulk in fully hulked out mode, if you've seen Infinity War, does not occur in that film because Hulk is going through some things and never is fully able to come out. In fact, he's only in Hulk, Banner is only in Hulkbuster mode in Wakanda, so that's a shot that was done specifically for the trailer, which the Russos are now known for. So anything that you've seen with the Endgame trailer, you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute. I don't think any of this is real. Especially since for the majority of the trailers that you've seen for Endgame, for a 3-hour film, you've seen pretty much maybe 20, 25 minutes of footage. And even on one of the trailers, which I think is their strongest trailer, it's like 2 minutes of flashbacks. So we have no idea what's happening in Endgame, which I think marketing-wise is the best thing going. And truthfully, I think with Endgame, the way that Infinity War ended and how many people were left on a cliffhanger, you didn't even need to market this bad boy, and you would have had butts in the seat. But it turns out they did, marketed it well, and it looks like they may be on their way to $1 billion in the first weekend, which is nuts. There's one more film that we're going to talk about with Phase 3. Now, granted, Phase 3 does go on to do Captain Marvel, Endgame, and what they're saying that Spider-Man Far From Home is also the final film in the Phase 3. However, this segment on the channel is called Trailer Rewinds. We're only going to talk about the ones that are not either currently in theater or about to come out. So we're going to stop and end at Ant-Man and Wasp. So let's go ahead and cue this bad boy up.
I just have one question. When Cap needed help, if I'd asked you, would you have come?
I guess we'll never know.
This was good to see that why Wasp
If you had, you'd have never been caught.
wasn't around. It immediately gives you like, oh, wow, that's why the Wasp wasn't at them. He went on his own, and he wound up on house arrest because he got in trouble with the Sokovia Accords and all of that good stuff. But he also, in doing so while saving people, alienated his friend and his mentor, Hank, and
We're still running.
his girl. Janet. Sorry, Hulk. I enjoy this movie. It's fine. It's another time where Ant-Man was used as the palate cleanser for what the film that we got before.
Someone watching your back.
And I think Paul Rudd does a great job. And it's good to see Wasp put on
Like a
screen.
partner.
What doesn't work for me, or what I kind of have a problem with, even though I like the visuals of what Ghost looks like and what her power sets are, she winds up not really becoming a villain. So this movie doesn't have really a villain, which kind of is the issue with Ant-Man as a whole. Like we have two films that really don't have a villain in it. But I think the bigger thing that Ant-Man does that I think is important is that it puts, if you've seen the end credits for Ant-Man and we get the Van Dyne family back together, you see that what he does in the quantum realm, or when he shrinks and goes in, is very important to what we're going to get for Endgame. This hat, kind of the color suits that you've seen in the trailer, this sort of is what the importance of Ant-Man and Hank Pym and that technology does. So I think you have to put Ant-Man and the Wasp on the board, if for no other reason, to give our heroes a chance and hope that for Endgame. But we're here, guys. It's go time. Like, I'm heading to the theater. I'm drinking now so that when I get there, I can pee. Because I'm not taking anything into that theater. I'm going there and I'm sitting down. And I'm betting that all of you are doing the exact same thing. This is serious. This is go time. We got 3 hours and 2 minutes to get as much information and as much gloriousness as we can before we cry our eyes out. This weekend's going to be rough for us in the nerddom world, with this and Game of Thrones probably taking away a lot of people off the board. But I'm curious to think, what did you guys think about Phase 3? Did we improve? Did we get better? Me personally, I think Phase 3 is when they took what they had and they ran with it. I think there's some great things with Doctor Strange. I think Black Panther is a masterpiece. Infinity War is one of the best things that honestly should not have worked, but it worked so brilliantly. And I'm excited to see what both Endgame does, closes, and gives us as we enter the next chapter for Phase 4, where we definitely know at least we have Black Widow on board, which could be a prequel. We have the Eternals coming, and we have Shang-Chi coming, and I would imagine both a Doctor Strange and a Black Panther pretty quickly down that pipeline, you know? But again, I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. I'm going to open up comments. I will approve them still, but probably starting on Monday, I'll just open them up for everybody, because I just don't want anyone who is not immediately going to see Avengers to be spoiled by anything that is said in the comments below. But again, if you haven't, go ahead, subscribe below, ring that bell. Myself and Blake will be talking on our podcast about Endgame at length. I believe Zane is going to be joining us too. It's like our third tier partner in crime. He's like the White Ranger. He shows up just when you need it. But go ahead and listen to that. You can find that on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. It will be spoilers, but we'll go ahead and leave a note in there when the spoilers actually start, and that'll be going up on Friday. We'll probably put a little clip of it, or a small segment of it, up here on YouTube, just so you can kind of see what we're doing. But yeah, if you guys have a comment, want to talk to me, go ahead and leave a comment. If not, go ahead and email me at hollywoodalreadydidit@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at hollywoodadi. Till next time, I got my ticket, and I'm going to the theater very soon. You got yours.